My name is Whitney Hale. I'm 33. 4 years after my family told our whole church I had vanished, my brother found my front door. It was a Tuesday in October. I was cutting apple slices for my daughter when the knock came. I opened the door and there stood Cole, my younger brother, gripping his phone like a shield. He said my name, then looked past my shoulder and every drop of color left his face. He backed down my porch steps without another word, phone already at his ear. "Mom, you need to see this." She never told us. He couldn't finish the sentence. What my mother did with that phone call, and what I finally did on a Sunday morning in front of every person who believed her, is why I'm telling you this story now. Welcome back to Echoes of Betrayal, where quiet people finally tell the truth about the families who underestimated them. Stay with me. This one has more than one twist. There's a house in Portland with a front door the color of a robin's egg. I painted it myself the week we moved in. 3 coats, cheap brush, good light. Inside lives a 4-year-old named Wren who believes pancakes are a food group. I work 12-hour shifts as a physical therapist downtown, sometimes 14. Most days I forget to eat lunch. Our life is small and deliberate. Daycare, work, pancakes, the library on Saturdays. In 4 years, nobody from Toledo, Ohio had crossed under that door frame. That was not an accident. It was also not the story my family told about it. They said I disappeared. Here's the thing about that word. It's passive. Fog disappears. Car keys disappear. It's a word that erases whoever did the erasing. What actually happened is that I stopped sending money home, and my family stopped being able to see me. It started, if I'm being exact. And I'm a physical therapist, I'm always exact. With an envelope at my own graduation, dinner 10 years ago at my mother's kitchen table. The spring I turned 23, I became the first Hale to finish college. A degree paid for with loans and double shifts at a diner. My mother, Diane, threw a dinner at the house in Toledo. Pot roast, a folding table, a sheet cake with my name spelled right. She propped my diploma against the gravy boat like a guest of honor. My father, Frank, said the blessing. Cole, 17 then, ate most of the cake. For about 2 hours, I was the pride of that kitchen, and I would have done almost anything to stay that way. After the plates were cleared, she slid an envelope across the table, cream-colored. My name in her tidy church bulletin handwriting. I thought it was a card. It was empty. "For the house," she said, patting my hand. "You're the one who made it out." Around the table, nobody blinked. Dad studied his coffee. Cole looked at the cake. I laughed a little because I thought I understood. One envelope, one favor, the least I could do. I filled it from my first real paycheck and mailed it back that same week. The second month, a fresh envelope arrived at the apartment I shared with 2 other new grads. My name in that same neat hand. The third month, another. Nobody ever asked out loud again. The asking had been done once at a celebration, in front of witnesses dressed as pride. That envelope was never meant to be filled once. It was a subscription. I just hadn't read the terms, because the terms were written in a language I'd been raised to call love. By year 2, I'd switched us to a bank transfer since stamps felt absurd. The first of every month, money left my account before sunrise. 1,100 most months, closer to 2,000 in the bad ones. And there was always a bad one coming. A new furnace. Dad's truck transmission. A new roof after a windstorm. I paid for that roof and felt proud of it. A daughter keeping rain off her father's head from 2,000 miles away. Cole's used pickup when his job required one. Christmas envelopes, Easter envelopes, birthday envelopes. On my side of the ledger, weekend shifts. Holiday pay every Thanksgiving for 5 straight years because holidays paid double. I was the therapist who never said no to overtime. My coworkers thought I was saving for something. I was. I just couldn't have told you what. I kept a running total in a notebook, updated to the dollar. Not because I wanted it back, because numbers were the only thing in that house that never lied. Words got slippery in my family, words like borrow and help and just this once. Numbers held still. By the 6th year, the total had 6 figures in it. I'll tell you the exact number later. I have said it out loud exactly once in my life, and when I tell you where, you'll understand why once was enough. One more thing about that roof, since I paid for it. In a photo, Cole texted one Thanksgiving. I could see the corner of the house, and a blue tarp was still on it, a year after the windstorm. I told myself contractors were slow in Ohio. I told myself a lot of things back then. Telling myself things was cheaper than asking my mother questions. And in those days, I still thought I couldn't afford the answers. The east entrance of my clinic had a rotted ramp, and the contractor who came to rebuild it was named Jonah Reed. He was a builder, 29, sawdust in his hair, and he stopped me one evening to ask what ramp grade worked best for patients who'd just relearned to walk. I gave him the numbers from memory, half asleep, and he wrote them down like they were poetry. He rebuilt that ramp better than the blueprints asked for, then asked me to breakfast. Since dinner was, in his words, the middle of my day, for 3 years he packed my lunches and labeled them by shift. When he proposed, there was no diamond. He tied a brass key on a ribbon, the key to a sagging little fixer-upper he'd made an offer on, with a porch he swore he'd have coffee on until he was 90, a door key instead of a ring. I said yes to the key. I took Jonah to Toledo exactly once. My mother asked what he made an hour before she asked his middle name. She asked whether builders got benefits and who carried the insurance. He answered everything with that easy patience of his. On the drive home, he just said, "Your mom sure loves numbers." He had no idea how right he was. I didn't tell him because I hadn't let myself count it yet. That night, while he slept, my phone lit up. A text from my mother, just for me. He seemed steady, honey. Also a small loan this month. Don't tell your father. My engagement had a price of admission. I paid it. For 6 years, I always paid it. That fall, a flu outbreak emptied half my clinic, and the half still standing worked like sled dogs. I came off a 14-hour shift, slept through an alarm for the first time in my adult life, and woke on the 4th of the month. The transfer went out 3 days late. The phone rang at 7 the next morning. My mother didn't yell. Yelling I could have fought. Her voice was flat, like a bill. She said the mortgage had been due, that she'd had to move money around in front of my father, which was humiliating. Then she said the sentence I have carried for 5 years, the one this whole story runs on. You don't get to be tired. You're the one who made it. I stood in my kitchen in scrubs gone soft from wear, looked at my own hands, apologized twice. She accepted once. I said I'd automate the transfer so it could never happen again, and she said that would be best. We hung up like a bank and a customer. What shames me now isn't that she said it. People tell you who they are all the time. That part is free. It's that I spent the drive to work agreeing with her, rehearsing ways to never again inconvenience anyone with my own exhaustion. I was 29, apologizing for sleeping after keeping strangers walking all day. It was a Tuesday in November, and I was mid-shift when my supervisor came to find me. And I knew before she spoke, because I have been the face that comes to find people. A scaffold on a commercial job downtown, a cable that had failed inspection paperwork said was fine. Jonah Reed, 32, was gone before the ambulance cleared the second light. I have cared for dying strangers, with more ceremony than the universe spent on the man who labeled my lunches. His crew carried him at the funeral. 8 builders in borrowed ties crying like weather. My family did not come. 2,000 miles was called a long drive. They sent carnations with a card signed, "The Hale family," in my Aunt Pam's handwriting, which meant my mother had delegated the flowers. 4 days after the funeral, my mother texted, "So sorry about everything, honey. Will this month's transfer be late with all this going on?" I read it standing in Jonah's closet, holding a flannel shirt that still smelled like cut lumber. I sent the money on time. I tell you that without pride. Grief makes you obedient before it makes you anything else. Oil the second ring, and I said, "Mom, I have to stop sending money." That is as far as I ever got. The line detonated. Ungrateful after everything. So this is who you are now. The mortgage. Your father's heart. Who did I think had paid for my ambition? Then the dial tone, flat as a heart monitor with nothing left to say. I called back twice. Voicemail, voicemail. I sat on the bathroom floor and felt the words I never delivered. Jonah's name, the baby, settle into my chest like swallowed glass. That week, my blood pressure earned me a specialist who used the words preterm risk and said stress, like it was a controlled substance. Cut it down or spend the pregnancy in a bed. So I tried the last door. I called my father. I could hear his garage radio, and I said, "Dad, please, something's happened." Frank Hale, who once drove 3 hours for my school concert, said quietly, "Don't upset your mother." What happened? Not, "Are you okay?" Every road into that family ran through Diane, and Diane had closed the road. I set the phone down, face down, and did not pick it back up. They could have asked one question. They never did. If you've ever been the family ATM, called on the first of the month and forgotten on your birthday, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I need you to understand how the word disappeared got manufactured, because nobody in my family ever told a lie you could quote. It started with my Aunt Pam, my mother's sister and personal broadcasting network. 2 months after that call, she posted online, "Praying for my sister through a heartbreaking season. Some children forget the people who raised them. No names needed." Then came coffee hour at Grace Chapel, the church in Toledo where my mother has run the women's committee since before I could walk. Somebody asked where I'd gotten to. My mother, I'm told, looked at her shoes, let the silence sour, then said, "We don't really know anymore," and touched her eyes with a tissue. Every word of that sentence was technically true. She didn't know because she'd hung up before knowing was possible. That's the genius of it. By the next coffee hour, a woman from the choir was using the word disappeared, and my mother didn't correct her. A thing that goes uncorrected in a small church becomes scripture by winter. My mother never lied. She just declined again and again to tell the truth and wept at the right moments and let 200 decent people write the story for her. I knew none of this at the time. I was 2,000 miles south, learning what swollen ankles meant, counting down to delivery. Cole told me all of it years later, ashamed at my own kitchen table. So let me close the question I opened at the start. Why I really stopped sending money? Because the answer was never spite, and it fits in one sentence. I had one salary, one dangerous blood pressure reading, one baby coming, and no one left to split the world with. That's the entire scandal. The last months of that pregnancy, I built a life with the sound off. I assembled a crib alone with a video playing on a paint bucket. Renee took my worst shifts and told my supervisor I was on light duty before I'd worked up the nerve to ask. The money that used to leave on the first of the month stayed and became a car seat, and the last piece of a down payment on the little house with the robin's egg door, and a cushion for the weeks I wouldn't work. It felt obscene at first, watching my own money stay. Like hoarding. That's what 6 years of envelopes does to your arithmetic. I moved in at 8 months pregnant, and Ren was born 3 weeks later, weighing 6 pounds and screaming. Like she already had opinions about the family she'd almost been born into. For 4 years after that, my mother's story hardened into fact. At church, at family reunions I wasn't invited to, in group texts I was quietly removed from, I became the one who cut us off. A cautionary tale about ingratitude. My Aunt Pam posted an anniversary tribute to Jonah once, tagging nobody, captioned, "Some griefs are private, and some people make even that about themselves." I never saw it. Cole showed it to me later on his phone, his hand shaking slightly, like the screen itself might bite him. What none of them knew was that I still had every bank statement. 6 years of transfers, dated and itemized, sitting in a folder in a fireproof box under my bed, right next to Jonah's tool belt and the notebook where I'd once kept a running total, a habit I never quite broke. I hadn't kept the records for revenge. I'd kept them the way you keep a discharge summary, because someday somebody might ask what actually happened, and I wanted to be able to answer with numbers instead of feelings. I never imagined the someone who'd finally ask would be my own brother, standing on my porch 4 years later, holding a phone that was about to unravel everything. My mother had spent that same 4 years building. So back to that Tuesday in October. Cole standing on my porch, phone at his ear, color gone from his face. He'd found me through a physical therapy conference website. A photo from a panel I'd spoken on, my name in the caption. He'd shown my mother that same photo the week before. Thinking it would be good news, proof I was alive and well. Instead, she'd gone pale and told him to delete it, said it would only stir up old pain. That refusal was the first crack. Cole, curious in the way only a little brother who's been lied to his whole life can be, kept digging. What he found on my porch that day, through my front window, was Wren's height chart penciled on the doorframe, and a photo on my hallway wall of Jonah at our engagement. Laughing, alive, dated 4 years after I had supposedly disappeared. A dead man in a photo with a date that didn't match the story. That was the second crack, and it broke everything open. Cole didn't come inside that day. He drove straight to our parents' house and asked our mother, point blank, why she'd told everyone I'd cut them off before Jonah died, when the truth was she'd hung up on me and never called back. She didn't have an answer that survived contact with a bank statement. 3 weeks later, I stood at the back of Grace Chapel on a Sunday morning, the folder of 6 years of transfers in my hands, and walked to the front before the sermon started. I didn't yell. I read the numbers out loud once, the way I'd rehearsed. The exact total. $211,000 sent over 6 years. To a family that told 200 people I was the one who disappeared. My mother didn't stay for the rest of the service. I did, and when it ended, 3 women I'd never met came up and told me their own numbers. I still don't send money home. I send birthday cards to Wren's grandfather, because some doors deserve to stay cracked even after everything. But the robin's egg door only opens now for people who ask how I am before they ask what I owe. People ask if I regret the 6 years. I don't, not entirely. They taught me the exact shape of my own limits. A strange gift from the people who tried hardest to erase them. I kept the notebook. I still update it sometimes, not with money anymore. Just with small proofs that a life can be rebuilt on numbers that finally add up in your favor. Wren is 4 now. She knows her father through stories and photographs, and a brass key we keep in a drawer. She's not allowed to touch yet. She doesn't know about the folder or the church or the word disappeared. She just knows pancakes are a food group, and that her mother always answers the door. If this story reminded you of your own family ledger, the one nobody ever balances in your favor, tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to become the villain in someone else's story just to survive your own, subscribe? Because next week, I'm telling you what happened when my mother asked to meet her granddaughter.